Donkey Kong has taken on a number of forms throughout the years and has meant many different things to many different generations of gamers. However, how did we go from this silly pixelated ape all the way to this beautiful and expressive Donkey Kong that we see today in Donkey Kong Bonanza? Well, strap in because we have over 5 decades of gaming history to go over so that we can understand how we got the ape that we all know and love today. Also, if you like bananas or even just talking about Nintendo video game history, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe down below. The year is 1981, and Americans are blissfully blind to the irreparable damage that the conservative movement will do to America for the foreseeable future. But most importantly, this decade would bring about the American arcade machine. And along with the greats like Pac-Man and Dig Dug and a bunch of other arcade machines I could really just give a less about, we would also get Donkey Kong published by Nintendo, where the DK Monkey would get his first iconic, oh my god, what is that? Why did nobody tell me he was a gorilla? I thought he was a monkey. Okay, so our iconic gorilla wouldn't quite yet be as friendly looking as he is nowadays. Hence the point of this section being labeled as the antagonist era of Donkey Kong, right? But as ugly as sin as this version of him would look, his 8-bit version wouldn't actually look that bad, and would become kind of iconic throughout the gaming world at the time. However, something to note is that this Kong is naked, and we would not see his iconic red tie until later versions of his design. But for now, this design that was created by Shigeru Miyamoto himself was just a big ol' ugly gorilla. But people loved him in the game Donkey Kong, becoming one of the highest grossing arcade cabinets in the history of all of gaming. And this simple yet heavily inspired design, so much so that it was almost considered a plagiarism at one point, would continue throughout the rest of the decade. In fact, after his series of arcade games had ended, we wouldn't see another version of Donkey Kong until 1994, with its first standalone game on the home consoles coming on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. But the design that we would see would be drastically different than the Donkey Kong we had seen throughout the 80s. Not only that, we would be sticking around with this design for basically the foreseeable future. And of course, the iconic design was created by none other than Rare Studios. Was founded in 1985 and become very well known for their games on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and the Nintendo 64. Games like Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Battletoads, and of course, the lovable ape that we know today, Donkey Kong. And I mean, this design was crazy different. I mean, watch this. But in reality, this version of DK would have a lot more personality, and he would finally be sporting that iconic red tie that we all know. And this look would define him throughout the entire Donkey Kong Country series on the home consoles. And not only would his look be different, but he would also gain an entire new family based around his look, along with Diddy Kong, Dixie Kong, and Cranky Kong, all of whose designs were designed by the lead Rare art director Kevin Bayliss, and also approved by Shigeru Miyamoto himself. I think these designs are just absolutely wonderful, and they brought so much life and personality to the Donkey Kong Country series. I mean, the Donkey Kong Country games are the best-selling games in the entire franchise, with Donkey Kong Country sitting at almost 10 million units sold. But this design would not stop its role in the 2 dimension. It was actually so successful that it translated into the 3rd dimension on the Nintendo 64. However, not all things translate very well to the Nintendo 64 in the 3rd dimension.
Here we go.
Donkey Kong 64 was released in 1999 and would feature the same version of Donkey Kong that we've seen in the Donkey Kong Country games, but man, he looks ugly as sin in his polygonal form on this game. On the box art, he looks okay, and it was just kind of obvious that this version of DK was probably just a growing pain and just did not age well, basically like every other game in the Nintendo 64 era did. But otherwise, I still think he manages to communicate the personality and charm that we saw from the original Donkey Kong Country games, and we also got even more of the Kong family expanded with a bunch of other really cool and unique designs, like Chunky Kong and Dixie Kong and a bunch of others, while all still being designed by Rare and Kevin Bayliss. It is such a silly and fun aesthetic that we would see in other games that are similar to this Donkey Kong 3D platforming format, like Banjo and Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day, that were also developed by Rare. But I really think that this design really was just very fitting for Donkey Kong, despite how not amazing it looked on the Nintendo 64, especially in 2025. But as ugly as Donkey Kong looked, we would see a refinement of his design throughout the coming decade. Throughout the GameCube and especially the Wii and Wii U eras, the Mario characters would get a sterilization of their designs, and unfortunately, Donkey Kong was no exception. We would see Donkey Kong in a ton of spin-off games like Mario Party, Mario Strikers, a ton of different sports games, and we would even see him have his own spin-off games like Donkey Konga and Donkey Kong Country Beat. But for the foreseeable future, it looked like the rare design was around to stay in the 3D era of Donkey Kong. And as this era went on, he would definitely become a lot more pleasant in the eyes compared to his Nintendo 64 era design. Now, throughout the Wii and Wii U era, we would see an improvement of how Donkey Kong looks to us, the player, but he would still undergo a lot of this sterilization that other Mario characters were victim to, especially during the new Super Mario Bros. U era. His models would look great in Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. And while he would have enough personality to make those games charming and fun, I still think that the sterilization of Donkey Kong at this point had reduced him and boiled him down to a caricature of his former personality. Additionally, there were just some quirks and small things about this design that just sometimes freaked me out. Like here in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, like, why does Donkey Kong have retractable teeth? Like, oh, that's just so gross. I mean, go sit with Cranky Kong, you denture-ridden ape. But graphical glitches aside, this version of DK would just become the staple that we know and love today. So that's it. Nintendo spent 2.5 decades refining and perfecting Donkey Kong's model and design, so much so that they made a deal with Universal Studios theme park where this version of Donkey Kong would be used in their theme parks of Nintendo World and the Donkey Kong theme park as well. I mean, with all of that commitment, surely Nintendo doesn't actually commit or even think about redesigning his character in the near future, right? Oh, motherfucker. In 2023, the Super Mario Bros. Movie dropped, and Nintendo fans panicked because it was obvious that this was a departure from the decades-old Rare design. But from a marketing standpoint, if we think about it, it kind of makes sense that they did this. By the time this movie had come out, the last time we got a original main series Donkey Kong game was in 2014, nearly a decade earlier. Yes, Donkey Kong had found himself throughout different spin-off games in the last decade, but he was starting to teeter on that line of finding himself in the attic of forgotten IPs like Star Fox and F-Zero. So if you want to reintroduce an iconic character back to your audience and even to a new audience, I couldn't think of a better way to do it, especially in a movie that's a lot more accessible to kids and with a brand new redesign of this character that is a lot more expressive and silly. However, the thing that confuses me the most is why they decided to do it when they did. I mean, you had Super Nintendo World opening in 2021, which didn't even feature Donkey Kong, but went under the assumption that this old Rare design was the default design for the upcoming Donkey Kong theme park that would open in 2024. Meanwhile, there's the movie redesign character that we would see in 2023, yet they still proceeded with the old Rare design and the new theme park. I mean, I do want to break down the drama and the history of the development of these theme parks in a later video, but for now, the main point is all of this had Nintendo fans super confused about the future of Donkey Kong. Would he get a brand new game with a new redesign? Were they going to keep the Rare designs at the old theme parks, or are they going to update them at some point? Are his teeth in the new design, if they decide to go with it, going to still be retractable? It was genuinely a turbulent time for a Donkey Kong fan in the Nintendo fandom. But thankfully, the future of Donkey Kong would become crystal clear in January of 2025. Nintendo would drop a teaser trailer for the Nintendo Switch 2, and in this trailer we would see all the amazing new features that the Nintendo Switch 2 is bringing to improve over the previous console, the Nintendo Switch 1. We would see all the new gimmicks and small improvements, we would see things like the new mouse controls, and we would even be treated to a teaser trailer of a brand new game, Mario Kart. Whoa, wait a minute! Replay the tape. Pause! That's Donkey Kong! He looks so different and silly and fun! And it was clear from this single frame of the teaser trailer that Nintendo would be redesigning Donkey Kong not only in accordance with its movie version, but would push the envelope even further and making him even more silly and whimsical, as you can see right here. And the final nail in the coffin would come in the first Nintendo Switch 2 Direct later in March. This version of Donkey Kong is probably the most charming and expressive version of Donkey Kong we have seen in his entire series. Like, look at all these emotions and expressions. I mean, I'd hire this guy as an actor. Plus, he's got jorts. I mean, who doesn't like a guy sporting a pair of jorts? Huh? But in all seriousness, this version of DK just rocks. I mean, it feels like it's almost a callback to his original design back in the 80s, while still being charming and pleasant to look at with the eyes. and continuing that expressiveness and a ton of joy that he just has throughout the Donkey Kong Bonanza game. I mean, obviously there are still a million other questions we have for Donkey Kong, like, what is this going to be the design that he looks like in Smash Bros? Will they eventually redesign him in the theme parks? Again, are his teeth going to be retractable? Some big questions here. While I'm sad to see the Rare design go, overall I'm very satisfied with this brand new design that we've seen from Nintendo. This ape is absolutely lovable, and in Mario Kart World he's just as expressive and fun as ever, while still in his brand new game of Donkey Kong Bonanza being an absolute charm to look at and play as. I mean, I generally cannot imagine this game with any other version of Donkey Kong at this point, especially for the few hours that I've sunken into it. I mean, I know there was a fair amount of backlash initially to this new design of Donkey Kong, but now with Donkey Kong Bonanza out, I think the overall zeitgeist of the internet has finally moved past this whole kerfuffle about it. But I want to know what you think of the new design in the comments below, and I also want to know what you think about the brand new game Donkey Kong Bonanza. And of course, as always, thank you so much for watching.